Would you rather elect a president to lead a country or a prime minister? Canada has a prime minister. The US has a president. Which political system would you rather have? Which one is better? I'm going to quickly break them down and cover some key differences in this video. Politics can be boring. This video isn't. A lot of Canadians don't understand how one person, the president, can have so much power. And a lot of Americans, they can't grasp the fact that Canada doesn't actually elect a person to lead the country at all. There's been a long-standing joke that Canadian politics is boring. And that might be so. But maybe boring also means more stable. I was watching some American reaction videos of Canadian politics. Basically, it was a guy walking around with a camera and a microphone, asking questions. And one of the guys being interviewed, they couldn't believe that in Canada, political parties can team up and vote the current leader out. In the interview, he said, they can do that? Can we do that? I'm covering 5 key differences between Canadian and American political systems in this video, and let's get right into it. Number 1, political parties and system. Canada uses a parliamentary system with multiple major parties. The Liberal Party, the Conservative Party, the NDP, New Democratic Party, the Bloc Québécois, the Green Party. They all currently have representation. This is going to get more interesting when I explain how the leaders are elected. In the US, they use a presidential system dominated by 2 main parties, the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. There's other parties as well, like the Libertarian or the Green Party, but they rarely win significant power. So let's get to number 2, make things a little bit more interesting. How leaders are elected. Citizens don't directly vote for the Prime Minister in Canada. The current Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, he's not directly elected to lead the country. Citizens vote for their local member of parliament, their MP. I mentioned the 5 parties with seats: Liberals, Conservatives, the NDP, the Bloc, and the Green Party. Every individual party chooses its own leader. And whatever party wins the most seats, they're elected. So the leader of the party becomes the leader of the country. And some people have a hard time getting past that. Americans and Canadians. How can you have someone lead the country when the party receives such a small percentage of the overall vote? Let's say there was an election and the Liberal Party won 35% of the vote, and the Conservatives won 25% of the vote, the NDP 20%, and the Bloc and the Green Party, they each won 10%. Even though only 35% of the country may have voted Liberal, the leader of the Liberal Party becomes a prime minister. It's crazy when you think about it, or even when you say it out loud. If the winning party or the party in charge changes leaders midterm, then a new prime minister is chosen without a public vote. So for example, if Justin Trudeau resigns, his party could pick a replacement to lead the party, and that person becomes the prime minister, even though the general population didn't vote for that person to become the prime minister. In the US, citizens vote directly for the president and the vice president through an electoral college system. Each state has a certain number of electoral votes based on the population, and the candidate who wins the most votes in a state typically gets all its electoral votes. Number 3, election timing. There's no fixed election date in Canada, although there's a general expectation that there's going to be an election every 4 years. The Prime Minister can also call for an election early, or a vote of no confidence in Parliament can trigger an election. Canada could technically have an election every year with no confidence votes. So basically, other major parties, they could team up, vote no confidence, and force an election. In the US, presidential elections happen on a fixed schedule every 4 years on the first Tuesday of November. There's no early elections unless there's the president resigns, they're impeached, or they pass away. Number 4, term limits. In Canada, the Prime Minister can serve indefinitely, as long as their party keeps winning elections. So Justin Trudeau, the current Prime Minister, he's in his 3rd term. His father, Pierre, he served for 15 years in total. Even if the other parties all get together and they vote no confidence and they force an election, and the Liberals or the party in power wins again, then the Prime Minister just basically stays the same. In the US, the president can only serve 2 4-year terms, 8 years max, due to the 22nd Amendment of the US Constitution. I believe I have that right. Number 5, campaign length and spending. In Canada, campaigns are relatively short, usually 30 to 50 days. There's very strict spending limits for political parties and candidates controlled by Elections Canada. And I kind of like that, to be honest. What I don't like is that the Prime Minister can call an election early, usually when their party is polling high, to try to secure more power. This can obviously make people angry, and it's seen as a waste of money, because it is. So for example, Justin Trudeau called a snap election in 2021, but it frustrated voters because it cost $600 million, and the outcome, it didn't change much at all. In the US, with primary elections, debates, conventions, they can last a long time, well over a year. There's very few spending limits. Billions are spent, advertising, rallies, campaigns. US elections are heavily influenced by wealthy donors and corporations. It's more prevalent in the US, but I'm not going to pretend that Canadian election campaigns, or political parties, I should say, aren't influenced by wealthy donors and corporations behind the scenes. I'm not that naive. It's so interesting watching US elections take place from Canada. Admittedly, Canadian elections can be pretty dull unless the candidates get caught up in some controversy or scandal, which can be kind of fun. But watching the US debates, the production value alone that goes into those debates, I'm not saying they're better than Canada, but it's certainly more entertaining. It's a real production. I covered 5 key differences. I didn't get into some of the more controversial issues, primarily from the US again, such as voter suppression, accessibility, strict voter ID laws, and reduced polling locations. They seem to be the focus of elections for the past few years. Elections Canada, they keep things pretty tight, pretty even across the country. What I don't like is that it seems to have become one or the other. You're pro-Canadian or pro-American, and any in between, it gets you lambasted online. If you basically voice that you're anti-America, you're considered a Canadian patriot. If you're pro or neutral America, you're seen as a traitor. I don't care for that at all. I'm not going to rant here. This is a quick video about some of the key differences in the political systems. If I forgot anything or if I'm wrong about something, please let me know in the comments. You always do. I always appreciate the feedback. Thank you very much for watching. Be safe out there, look after one another, and perhaps we will see you again.